women are. Women are the guardians of space. You know, there's Kedushas Hazman, there is hallowing and sanctifying time, which is really the department, the forte of men, and that's why they're obligated in mitzvahs, all mitzvahs, and women are relieved of the few mitzvahs, Shazman Groma, that are time-related, because time is not that which is our department, and we obviously have to be relieved of those mitzvahs so that we can attend to those which are our first priority. But what is our department is Kedushas HaMakom, the sanctification of space. And the sanctification of space begins with sanctifying the very womb. Women, as we all know, are the ones who sanctify the womb, the time when we get married. That's the first space that we sanctify. Before we go on to have children, that is the space, the primary space that we sanctify. And then we move into the home. And it's obvious to anybody who just, walks with their eyes open and has a heart that discerns, that you walk into a home and immediately it's obvious what the woman of the house is all about. Because the house, the home, reflects her energy. It reflects the mahus, the essence of the woman. And you get a sense of that when you walk into a home, because again, her forte, her department is Kedushas HaMakom. And now, let's talk about a home. And I think that we have to distinguish between a home and a house. This can, I think it's a thought and a concept that is best explained with tell you a private, personal story. Personal story was that I was born in Europe. I was born middle of the war years, and I was fortunate. My father, Zichron Avrocha, was a Rebbe. He was a Rebbe in Poltachen. It was called Poltachen Rav. And he was a larger-than-life figure. And then the war broke out, and the menfolk were sent away. It was actually happened on a Friday afternoon. And they were sent to a labor camp. They were all piled into cattle cars and sent away to a labor camp. My mother of blessed memory was expecting me at the time, and I was born, a little story, but I'm sure you're very interested, but anyway, I have a chance of a captive audience, and sometimes it's cathartic to tell my stories. Anyway, so I was born and in a cellar, and I was breech. I was a troublemaker right from the start, and doctors weren't allowed to assist Jewish women to give birth, and the woman who was hiding my mother in the cellar offered this woman everything she owned so she would come and help my mother give birth. In any case, my father was one of those fortunate ones who came back from the labor camp, bruised and battered and barely human, but he came back. And we tried to get on a boat. We came to the shores of Eretz Yisrael. This was our first choice. The British turned our boat around and said, we have enough Jews. We have our quota of Jews. We don't want any more Jews. So when everybody in the boat said, where are we supposed to go? They said, not our problem. So we ended up first in Greece and then in Italy in the refugee camp, and for a year and a half before we came to America. At one point, my mother, Blessed Mary, told me that a person came over to me while we were in this refugee camp, and I was a little girl, 4 years old, and he looked at me and he said, "You poor darling, you've been, flung from corner to corner, everywhere on the globe, and nobody wants you, and you haven't had a home. You have no home to call your own." And she said that I looked at him and I said to him, "You're mistaken. I do have a home. I just don't have a house to put it into, but I have a home." And the fact is that a home and a house are two different things. You can have a beautiful, magnificent house, you can have the latest draperies and furniture, and it could still might not be a home. A home, the definition of a home is a relationship between a husband and wife who raise children in a secure atmosphere. And primarily also, a home is that which has values, the values of Torah and mitzvahs, where a husband and wife are striving towards the same thing, where they're trying to better themselves, to grow spiritually all the time. That's the definition of a home. So here I really wanted to talk to you about a home. But first I wanted to tell you that we know from a Torah perspective how much the Torah appreciates and values what a woman has to offer. And you know that it's for this reason that the Torah tells us before Matan Torah, before Hashem was ready to give the Torah, that he said, "Kosoma leveis Yaakov." Rebbetzin Shalom told Moshe Rabbeinu, "So you should say to the house of Yaakov, v'sagid l'bnei Yisrael," and then tell the children of Israel. And Rashi addresses the question, and many Mefarshim do. There's redundancy here. It's repeating the same thing. Kol somar, so you should say to the house of Yaakov and to the children of Israel. The house of Yaakov and the children of Israel are one and the same. So why is it repeating that? And they tell us that the reason is that Beis Yaakov, as you all know from the many schools that are named by that name, that are called by that name, Beis Yaakov refers to women. So the Rebbetzin Shalom was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, if we want Klal Yisrael to receive a Torah and to be able to live by that Torah, for that Torah, that commitment to endure, first you must go to Beis Yaakov. First you must go to the children of Yaakov, referring to the women. If the women will commit themselves, then we know we've got something going. If the women won't commit themselves, forget it. Don't offer them the Torah. And some the Mefarshim even add a little cute thing. They said, because in a way, so to speak, Kaviyachal Rebbetzin Shalom learned his lesson from the fact that he told Adam Harishon not to eat of the tree, and he didn't tell Chava directly not to eat. If he would have told Chava directly, the story would have ended differently. But she had to get the message from Adam. And when it came from Adam, it was different than what he had said. He said not to eat. She heard, don't touch. And that's how all the problems began. If, so to speak, he had gone straight to Chava, she would have heard it correctly. So to speak, Kaviyachal Hashem wasn't making the same mistake twice. So he said, now I have my most prized treasure. I have Torah to offer Klal Yisrael. Go directly to the women first. And if a woman will commit herself, then give them the Torah. So women are, Chazal say that men are the kol of Torah, they are the voice of Torah, which means that's why you hear men learning Torah, there are Melim Torah, Torah that's theoretical, like Gemara, Halacha L'Masa, that Torah, women are obligated to know as well. But theoretical Torah is the forte of men. But making all the Torah that men learn come alive, that's a woman's job. The woman is represented by the Eish of Torah. The man is the coal and the woman is the ish, the fire of Torah. She takes that voice, that learning, and she makes it come alive in the home. So she is the one that attaches passion to it, and she makes it all happen in the home. So Chazal, and of course, how does a woman make this happen? And this needs more time than we have here. But by creating an atmosphere, this home, which is the forte of the woman, that it has to be an atmosphere of illumination. Illumination meaning not only light but warmth, an atmosphere of simcha. That is the greatest challenge for women, to be besimcha and to create an atmosphere of simcha. An atmosphere of joy, an atmosphere in which children are not only raised and given nurturance and given milk and given whatever they need to survive on a physical level, but to be able to look at these children with shining eyes and to say, not only did I bring you into this world, but I'm so happy that you're here. And the fact that you're here gives me so much joy. I'm so excited to have you here. Of course, that's not to say that we all have our moments. Everybody has a moment where we're not there, quite in that space and with that mindset. But for the most part, that's what we need to strive for, and that's what we have to ask the Rebbetzin Feige Twerski to achieve, to create a happy space, a space where children look forward to come home to, a space where a husband looks forward to come home to, where children know it's a safe place, they can talk to their parents no matter what it is they have to say. That's the real overriding tafkid, the mission of a woman, to be able to do that. And again, it's not easy, and we're not always successful, and at moments we're not successful, the point is that we say, okay. And a lot of women call me, they say, I really botched up my child today. I overreacted, I responded in anger, and I'm sure this child will be scarred forever. And crying on the other end of the phone or in person. I said to them, honey, please, don't worry. Your child will not be scarred forever. Just like you overreacted in a negative sense, next time you're going to overreact in a positive way. When your child walks by, just grab that child and hug that child, give that child a big hug and kiss. And the child will look at you at first like, like what's going on here? What did I do? And you say, no, I just love you so much. And you counteract the negative with a positive, then your child will not be scarred forever, I guarantee you. So, creating simcha, creating that ner daluk me erev Shabbos to erev Shabbat, that was the bracha in Sari Meiniv's home, that we, being Sari Meiniv's children, can replicate in our own homes. That light, that illumination, that warmth, that simcha. That's what we're all about. We know that after 120 years, when we come up there before the Kisei HaKavod, based in Shalmala, the first question a woman's going to be asked is, were you an Isha Keshera? Were you a good wife? Were you a kosher wife? And what's the definition of a kosher wife? So they say Isha Keshera is somebody she'osa ritzon bala, that she does the will of her husband. Of course, usually when you say that, you hear a groan from the audience, like, oh, seriously? Like, we're living now in the 21st century. But really, the interpretation of that is something a little bit different. She'osa ritzon bala really means she creates the ratzon of her husband. She's the one, because women are smart. And women understand intuitively. Women have emotional intelligence, far, the Bina Yesera that the Torah talks about, far greater than that of a man. And we know that the things that we really want for our men, we get. And we know exactly how to get that, if we want to apply our seichel. So that's what it means. Osa Raton Bala, she creates the will of her husband. She decides what her husband is going to want. And I mentioned to many groups in the past that my father Zichron Bracha was the wisest of men. And he used to tell us, he used to say, Kinderlach, gather round because I want to tell you something. And he'd say to us, listen carefully to what your mother has to say today, because in 3 weeks it's going to be my opinion. And he was absolutely right. He would say, no, that's not the way it is, this and that. In the end, he came to the same mind of my mother. And he appreciated that it's emotional intelligence. Now, when we talk about Osa Raton Bala, creating the will of her husband, then we need to know what it is we want to create. And we need to apply this ability that we have towards good things. And one of the things that we want to make sure to do is to see that our homes are Torah homes, that our homes are such where our husbands learn. There isn't any greater guarantee for good children and for all kinds of chesed from the Rebbetzin Shalom when we encourage our husbands to learn. And our husbands will not learn unless they're encouraged by the women. Absolutely not. We're told, Noshim b'mai zochyan, how is it that we get the same portion of Olam Haba after 120 years? The same, if men are sitting and learning all day, of course they're going to get a great portion in Olam Haba. So how am I going to get the same portion that my husband gets? And they say because women wait for their husbands to come home from learning. It doesn't mean that it has to be literally waiting. What it's talking about is if we give our husbands positive feedback for the fact that they learn, and we look at them with shining eyes, and we say to them, wow, I can't believe it, after a whole day's work, you're still going out to learn. Or, if that's not a possibility, one of the things you're being offered here tonight by whoever is in charge here, whom I haven't met, and I have no clue, but there is an organization here being formed where they're going to make it possible for somebody to come to your home in the evening, which means that what is it called?
I was meant to come and introduce you, I'm sorry. The name of
Arivas HaTorah? Okay, Arivas HaTorah is the organization, and for those husbands who are too tired to come home late and who can't make it out to a kollel, then they're offering to send a person to the home to study with your husband. And that is such an unbelievable opportunity, that it would be such a great gift to have somebody come to the home. You know how, I don't know if you, all of you are familiar with the Daf Yomi, right? The daily Daf that's studied. Now you know how this happened? On the first Knessia Gedola, the originator of the Daf Yomi was Rameya Shapiro. He had the Lublina Rav, he was called Lublina Rav. He happened to be my father's Rebbe. My father studied in Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin. In any case, the Lublina Rav launched this program of Daf Yomi, that everybody worldwide would learn the same Daf every day. And everybody derided him, made fun of him. They said, are you out of your mind? It will never happen. People in Honolulu are going to learn the same Daf as in Ramat Beit Shemesh Gimel or in Aleph or whatever. That could happen. Everybody made fun of him. But he went ahead, and he did it. And then the Ger Rebbe in the first writer, he pulled out a Masechta Brachos and began learning, and it took off. At the first Knessia Gedola of the Agudas Yisrael in Poland, the Lublina Rav was asked to address the Mesiba and to tell them, where did he get this idea from? To launch a Daf Yomi, such a ridiculous idea that only could happen through Nissim. Where did he get the idea? So he said to them, this is in front of the whole thousands of people, he said, it was my mother. I got the idea and I got the inspiration from my mother. He says, I was a little boy and my parents had no money whatsoever. And they arranged for a Rebbe to come and teach me from someplace far away. This was in Europe. Everything was so difficult. He said, my parents, we barely had what to eat. And they offered this Rebbe who was going to come a certain amount of money. And he didn't come. He didn't show up. He says, I never, ever saw my mother cry. He said, I came out of my room into the kitchen, and my mother was sitting and crying. And I said to him, Mommy, was weinst du? What's the matter? Why are you crying? And she said, the Rebbe we had arranged for didn't show up. It's possible that we just didn't offer him enough money. We basically offered him everything we had. And she says, my Taya kind, I want you to know that every day that goes by without the study of Torah can never be retrieved. It's a day gone. And over she'd say, my Taya kind, a day that goes by without the study of Torah can never be retrieved. He said those words sunk into my mind, into my heart. And I decided that it has to be, people have to learn. And I can make it easier for them, a daf a day. He said that's what inspired me to launch the Daf Yomi. And how magnificent is that? That you see people, business people, you see all over, they get on a plane and they have the little, Gemaras with them, and they're sitting there and learning. And it's awesome. And it all came from his mother. The inspiration came from his mother. So today, we're not launching a Daf Yomi, but the fact is that if we want our husbands to buy into some system, Eitz Chaim Hilama Chazikim, this tree of life, then it's going to be only because of women. And the Mishnah talks about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's 5 students, and it talks about all the great malas. One was a Borsi, Chena Mabek Tipa. Once he learned something, never forgot. The other one was Kamayan Hamizgaber, constantly, new things were evoking, coming out of his person, new Chiddushei Torah and such. And the other Talmidim who had all various, one was a Yorei Chet, one was a Chassid. With Rabbi Yehoshua, what was Rabbi Yeshua's midah? Ashrei Yoladato, the Mishnah says. How fortunate is the woman who gave birth to him. And Rashi comments on it. Rashi says, what's the story? Ashrei, worthy is the woman who gave birth to him. His mother took his crib to the Beis Medrash and placed it in the Beis Medrash so that he was an infant immediately after he was born, so that he could hear the sound of Torah at an almost pre-conscious stage, knowing that being surrounded by that Torah, by the sound of Torah, by the energy of Torah, what that would do for Rabbi Yehoshua, that he became one of the greatest Tanoim of all times. Again, it was his mother who knew the value of Torah. And so Rabbi Yehoshua is one of these 5. It made of Rabbi Yehoshua who he was, that he became of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's outstanding Talmidim. On a personal level, to tell you, I was just telling somebody, one of my granddaughters today, maybe it was my grandson. Anyway, we were walking to shul together, and I said to him, my mother grew up in Europe at a time before there was a Beis Yaakov, before there was any kind of school for girls. And still in all, my mother used to move through the day. Whenever something came up, she would quote Gemaras for me. And I said to her, Mommy, you didn't go to school. Here I am, a big shot. I went to school. I went to Beis Yaakov. I went to seminary. But you didn't. I didn't put in so crass words like that. In any case, I said to her, but how do you know? How do you know all these Gemaras? And she said to me, are you kidding? She says, my father, Rebbetzin Feige Twerski, was magnificent Talmud Chacham, who had such a tragic life, and it was basically Torah that saved him. He learned morning, noon, and night. And my grandmother was paralyzed from a very young age. And my mother would wake up in the middle of the night, and of course he would still be learning, and she would go and make him a hot cup of tea. And not wanting him to be alone, she would sit with him as he drank his tea and continued learning. And she said, how could I not know after listening to that all my life, Torah over and over and over again? How can I not know the Gemaras and be able to quote Gemaras for you? So that was the power of listening, of hearing in the house the sounds of Torah. And on a more personal level even, when we first got married, we came back. We were in Lakewood for a while, and then we came back, and my husband became assistant Rav to his father. My husband, a flunky, his father, it's a Chronovacha. And there were so many responsibilities that he had. And on a daily basis, he would say, I haven't gotten to my Seder yet the way I want to, but as soon as things calm down, I will get to my Seder. I will start my learning. And of course, predictably, as you all know, life does not calm down. Responsibilities, mount. So finally, one day, he decided a certain amount of non-negotiable time, come what may, he's going to learn. I think maybe he even made a neder to that effect. So after that, he sat down to learn, and Mashiach would come. I could guarantee you, that if he hasn't finished his Seder before Shkia, Mashiach would have to sit in the dining room and wait, because he's going to finish his Seder. Even times when he went, my father's Chronovacha was best friends with the Ramat television, so the Ramat should be well. And Ramat has tons and tons of Hasidim. And you can't get into it, you have to make appointments, and there's a room, people wait, cup, piled on, waiting to see the Rebbe. My father, on one occasion, my husband drove him to see the Ramat, and and there are tons of people waiting, but as soon as they hear Folter Chenadov is here, and they're close buddies, so they say, you don't have to wait, come on, we're going right in. And my husband accompanies my father, and my father, they greet each other warmly, they're best friends, and my husband gives shulam to the rabbi, and he says to the matala, he says, you have to forgive me, I can't stay. I have not finished my Seder yet, and I must go out to learn. The Gabbai there met my husband 15 or 20 years later in the street. I mean, he saw him across the street, and Rabbi Twerski, can I have a word with you? He said, you don't remember me. I'm sure you don't remember me. But I was the Gabbai of the Vizhnitzer Rebbe. When you walked in there, and you said to him, I'm sorry, I can't stay and visit with you. I have learning that I still have to do. He said, you know what that meant? The Rebbe since then started a whole thing. He introduced a system where Yingalad would learn a certain amount a day, and we come to be tested, he said, based on what you told him that day, when he saw that you could be that committed to learning. So anyway, I was telling you, so my husband has this thing about learning. It's wonderful and it's terrific. But when I had the little children in the house, Murphy's Law, he has to finish his learning, and it was a rabbi's house. All the doors are ringing, the bells are ringing, the phones are ringing, and everything, and the kids need attention. And I'm trying to do all this. and just running around like a, And after, and of course, where's my husband? He's in his fur room downstairs, he's learning. So he comes up after he's done learning, and he's humming a tune as he walks up the steps. Now, there's nothing more infuriating than here I'm beating my brains out, and I'm going crazy, and he's walking up the steps, and he's humming a tune. So he comes into the kitchen, and I said to him, it's very nice, I'm so happy that you're humming a tune. But I would also be humming a tune if I were downstairs and you were up here taking care of the craziness. I would also be humming. So he said to me, okay, I want to tell you something. And I want you to pass this on to women, whoever you talk to. There are two reasons why I have to do this. The first reason is that the first thing you need to tell women is that if they think that it's so easy to learn, that men can't wait to get to that Gemara, like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to get to that Gemara and I'm going to be in heaven, tell them they should think again. Men come from a heavy day's work, whether it's they're working outside the home or even in Koilel where they've been struggling over a piece of Gemara and whatever. It is so difficult to sit there by a Gemara and to focus and to concentrate. He said, and I know this to be the case, he was so exhausted sometimes when he had to do his learning that he couldn't afford to sit down because he would fall asleep. So he would stand by a stender and learn. Sometimes that wasn't enough. So he'd stand there by a stender and he'd always had a jar of peanuts so that he'd chew at the same time that he was standing so that he wouldn't fall asleep. And sometimes that wasn't enough. So he would stand by the stender, chew, and he'd have to kick one foot into the other so that he wouldn't fall asleep so that he can finish his Seder for the day. This is what it took for him to learn. And he said, just let women know that it's not like they're trying to absolve themselves of the responsibilities of taking care of the kids or of not helping or of that. Just understand that it's not easy for a man to learn. He said, number one. The second thing he said, which is maybe even more important, he said, I knew that the person you are, you would never respect a husband who didn't have who wasn't kaveh itim for Torah. He didn't have Torah in his life, who didn't set aside time to learn Torah. And he said, more than anything else, I need your respect. And that's true of all of our husbands. They need our respect. And if we demonstrate to them that this is what we respect, and we have a good talking to ourselves, and we say, this is really so important. There isn't anything more important than the learning of Torah. And they will not do it unless we have a value for it, unless we create a home in which there's a value for Torah. If we don't have that respect for it, the men never will. They're totally dependent on us to value Torah in that way. So now you have this opportunity. You have an opportunity of not only of husbands encouraging them, they can go out to study, good and fine. But if they can't go out to study, no matter what else they're doing in their life, that if we encourage them to have this program now, take advantage of this program, have somebody come to the house, and it will enrich not only them, but it'll be like Rabbi Yoshua. All your children will see there's no better way. You can talk about the value of Torah, about the cheshivas of Torah. You can talk and talk and talk. It's so much more valuable. And really the only thing that works is modeling that. If somebody's in your house and the little kids say, where's Tati, where's Tati? You say, Tati, he's learning. He's in there learning. Somebody came here and he's learning Torah. You know what that does for the child? The children learn what they see, not what they heard, what they're preached to about. So children see that if we want our children to have a cheshivas for Torah, then we have to show it to them. And the way we show it to them is encourage our husbands. And if our husbands, they have two options now. They can go out to the kollel, if that's not a possibility, if they're too tired. This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, not only for them, but for the entire family. And my grandson, when I told him what I wanted to talk about, so he said to me, you know what, Bobby, what the Gemara in Chagiga says? I said, no, find it for me. So he said that Reb Lakish says, Ha'osek b'Torah b'layla, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe Chalav, Chut shel Chesed b'yom. Somebody who learns Torah at night, then the Rebbeinu Shalom brings him all kinds of chesed during the day. And you women are the only ones who can make that happen. You can make it happen. You all know how you can do it. Every wife knows the key to her husband's heart. And there are more keys than just food. So you can do whatever it takes and encourage your husbands, because we know that they're going to be the beneficiaries, you're going to be the beneficiaries, children will be the beneficiaries, Klal Yisrael will be the beneficiaries, and like we're told, B'schus Noshim Tzidkanios Nigalumi Mitzrayim, because of worthy women, we were redeemed. Now the Sedras are all about Mitzrayim, and it's in the schus of women, Tzidkanios, that we were redeemed, and now we need the schus of women Tzidkanios in our time to bring the Gula Shlema. And this is certainly a way to go in order to bring the Gula Shlema. So Hatzlacha Rabbah to all of us. And a good Tavach.